Hell no longer holds any surprises for me. My girlfriend of 3 months had invited me to her parents' house for dinner so I could meet them. I eagerly accepted her invitation, expecting all would go well and our relationship would be taken a step further. How wrong I was. I thought it necessary to bring a gift with me, so I stopped by a liquor store to pick up some carbon franc. That's when I saw the demonic remedy. There sat a 5-pound bag of Harborough sugar-free gummy bears. On my way to her house, I merely munched on the multicolored bears and was brought back to a happier time. A time when gummy bears weren't used to get information out of terrorists. I was just about finished with the bag when I arrived at her parents' house. Everything seemed to be going well at first. Her parents were getting to know me while she set the table. That was when the warning shots were fired. It was a slight gurgle at first, calm, quiet. Then, just as dinner was being served, it grew into a powerful rumble. My face grimaced as the serene ocean of my stomach was overturned by a raging storm that would bust the floodgates of my colon. Beads of warning sweat began to form on my upper brow, while my mouth started to fill with a thick foam. As the sweat started to get into my eye, I was put into fight or flight mode, and a wave of adrenaline rushed into me. The noises coming from my stomach grew in amplitude. Eventually, they started to sound like starving wolves fighting over scraps of meat. At this point, I had to clench my cheeks so the rush of fecal matter wouldn't escape through the crack in the dam. But it felt as though nothing would abate my bowels. The gummy bears were laying siege to the insides and forcing all they came across off the premises. I couldn't bear it anymore. The tides of bodily waste quickly rushed out the floodgates and into my boxers. I promptly excused myself from the table, but I'm afraid everyone could smell what was going on. I rushed up the stairs to the bathroom as fast as I could in my current condition. I started praying to every deity I've ever heard of whilst I was waddling up the stairs. But, much to my dismay, once I approached the bathroom clenching my cheeks, I could no longer pacify the raging demon. I quickly disrobed, sensing the backlash would soil my clothes. Then, I started to exorcise the demon. As the release continued, I began to lose control of my body. That was when the smell hit me. I almost threw up. I wish I had. The smell of vomit was smelled like spring flowers and fresh linens compared to the abomination of a stench that was bombarding my nostrils. No amount of exposure desensitized me, but after some time, I mustered up the strength to drop some more bombs. It sounded like soda cans dropping onto a hardwood floor. The splash that ensued covered my backside in a brackish liquid that can only be described as petrifying. But the nightmare wasn't over yet. It felt as though the Chernobyl reactor was about to go off in my sphincter. My hands spasmed as the last bit of my soul was expelled from my body. Before I wiped, I had a revelation. There was no way it would flush properly. I rushed into the car and didn't look back. My torment didn't end there though. A few moments later, my girlfriend called me, but after the fourth or fifth decline, I decided to pick up. She started yelling about how I disrespected her, her parents, and her household when I flooded their bathroom. I didn't care. Elvis had left the building. Not all was well though. Just as I got onto the highway, the wolf that won began to howl again. I was miles away from a bathroom. I had to think fast. I turned down the radio and rolled down the window so my cries of agony could alert someone who didn't pass out from the odor to get help. I finally saw it, the marvelous exit sign. I floored it in hopes that I could make it to a gas station before I ruined my leather seats. But once I made it, the feeling of deja vu suddenly overtook my bowels and they began to cry out in pain. I rushed into the store, wiped some of the foam from my lips and asked where the bathroom was, but it was already starting. It was as though the gummy bears were searching my small intestine for survivors so they could make an example of them. Their screams of agony formed a rumble in my stomach that made it obvious I was going to ruin this bathroom. The man behind the counter handed me the bathroom key, and this time I sprinted, not caring about the monster who was tearing apart my body. Once inside, I quickly dropped my pants and opened up the stall. The horror that would follow is the reason people think gas station bathrooms are disgusting. I attempted to squat over the toilet seat, as I didn't want to touch it, but I didn't have time to lay down any TP. But as I finally released the hounds, I lost all strength in my legs. I collapsed onto the seat, and I had a terrible realization. While I was hovering, some of the turds sprayed onto the seat, the toilet tank, the floor, and the wall. It looked like blood splatter from horror movies. I did all I could to lift myself back up. The more I tried, the more I smeared shit on my cheeks and thighs. Unfortunately, the janitor came in at that very moment. I used the remainder of my strength to quickly lock the door, then I bit down on my arm to drown out the sound of me gasping for air. I pointlessly struggled to hold up my legs so he couldn't tell which stall the unholy stench emanated from. He wet the floor, then began mopping it. As he approached my stall, he stopped whistling and exclaimed, "What the fuck? What kind of animal died in there?" I knew that if he opened my stall, one of us was going to die in that bathroom. I prayed one more time, begging God that the lock would hold. Then I reached for my belt so I could choke him the instant he made it in. But luckily, when he couldn't open the door, he decided it wasn't worth his pay rate. I let out a sigh of relief as he left, but I couldn't move anymore. I was so dehydrated from my movement that I was too dizzy to stand. That's all I remember before waking up in the hospital. They say I was lucky to be alive after that ordeal.